Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us and taking the time to be here with us online today. This is an online session of the Knowledge and Learning Commons. And for those who are new to the Commons, this is our space at UN Geneva for diplomats, staff, and interns across the UN Geneva system to come together and share knowledge and collaborate across issues of importance to us in our professional development, as well as areas of multilateralism. And to do this, we are able to work with experts and practitioners across UN Geneva who engage with us and bring their knowledge. Today's session is held and led by our Staff Counsellors Office, HRMS, at UN Geneva. And actually, it's a follow-on session from last week's webinar called Keeping a Healthy Mind, as we together work through new ways of working and new ways of living in response to COVID-19. We have with us our two staff counsellors, Mary Bridget Leahy and Rosa van der Heide. And today's session focuses a little bit deeper on how to cope with anxiety, tips to cope with anxiety. As we enter our fourth week of telecommuting full-time, there are still lots of unknowns, lots of uncertainties, and for all of us, we could react in different ways. So in our session today, our counsellors will focus on tips that might help you to cope with any anxieties, but also to recognise some signals of what anxiety could be. They'll also provide advice on how to be able to pause and to acknowledge what might be happening with your feelings so as to better help manage or even reduce anxieties. And they'll also guide us through a brief 5-minute mindfulness practice if you would like to join us for that. The session will also, of course, include time for you to ask your questions and also to share your ideas and engage with our counsellors. So please use the live Q&A box to the right of your screen if you do have a question or even an idea to share. We will get to those questions and any ideas you have in the second half of the session. So that's enough from me. Over to you, Rosa, and then Mary.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Nathalie, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today. We almost finished our fourth week, and you may have found a rhythm that works for you, a daily structure with new habits, and I think most days you have figured out how to stay on track in this new environment. Some days the shift to the home office has maybe become the new normal to you. I think there also might be days where you feel that you can't get anything done. You may find yourself feeling pessimistic, worried, or feelings of anxiety may be taking over. And I want to emphasize that this is all normal and it's part of the process during a crisis situation. Because we still face many uncertainties and unknowns. We have no idea how long this will last and what will happen in the future. So that's why today we will talk about how to deal with feelings of anxiety. Before we go there, let me first briefly introduce the Staff Counsellors Office. So my name is Rosa van der Heide. I'm one of the Staff Counsellors. And I'm together today with Mary Leahy, the head of the Staff Counsellors Unit. And we also have Sharmila Entler. She is the Staff Counsellors Office assistant. And the Staff Counsellors Office really mainly focuses on the mental health and the well-being for staff members. And we know that this is more important than ever. So we focus on prevention. That's why we do webinars together with Commons. We have mindfulness sessions together with Commons. And we also, after Easter, we will send you a broadcast with workshops on resilience in collaboration with the Center for Learning and Multilingualism. Also, please remember that if you have a personal question and you want to reach out, you can contact us by sending an email to the Staff Counsellors Office, staffcounselor@un.org. So now we will talk about anxiety. And as I said before, it's normal to have feelings of anxiety to potential threats in uncertain times. Because this pandemic, COVID-19, can be seen as a threat, especially because we have no idea how long this will last and we do not have control over the situation. So our human reaction is to take action, to feel in control. And therefore, it's also okay to allow yourself to have such feelings as anxiety and sadness. We are human beings, we are no robots. So it's okay, and it's very important to be kind to yourself. That said, anxiety can be very, very uncomfortable, and if not balanced, it can lead to great distress for some people. Therefore, it's important to make us aware of what behavior feeds anxiety and what helps us to lower it. Therefore, we will share today some tips to reduce anxiety. So what do we actually mean with anxiety? And anxiety is a mental and physical reaction to perceived threats. And in small doses, anxiety can be very helpful because it protects us from danger and focuses our attention on problems. But when anxiety is too severe or it occurs too frequently, it can become exhausting, it's draining, and it also can influence our daily functioning. So when feelings of intense fear and distress are overwhelming and it prevents us from doing everyday things like working, taking part in social gatherings with family and friends, then it's important to have a look on how to lower it. We need to find ways to lower the amount of anxiety. And in case you feel it's getting too much and all the tips and tools that we are explaining and discussing today will not apply to you, remember that it's also possible to contact us individually for an individual counseling sessions, and we can, if needed, for example, arrange a referral. So I would like to discuss a little bit more what are the signals of anxiety. And anxiety can cause many different reactions. It might affect how you feel physically, also cognitively, and how we behave. And it's not always easy to recognize when anxiety is a reason that you're feeling uncomfortable. So let's discuss a bit the physical signals. So how do you feel it in your body? So you can, for example, feel it in, you can notice it in your heartbeat. It can go faster, it can become more irregular or more noticeable. Also, feeling lightheaded or dizziness can be a sign of anxiety. Also headache, chest pain, and loss of appetite. Also, we have sometimes common signals in your mind, cognitively. So, for example, feeling tensed or nervous all the time, or being unable to relax. It's very difficult for you to relax anytime. Worrying about the past or the future, feeling tearful, feeling more emotional, or difficulties with sleep. These are common cognitive signals in your mind. Other signals can be in how you behave. For example, you're not able to enjoy time outside of work, leisure time. Of course, nowadays it's a bit more difficult because it's for some people it might be a little bit more difficult to distinguish between work and private life. But it's also important to take time to switch off from work. Also, some people might see it with difficulty looking after themselves. Also here, I emphasized in the previous webinar that it's still very important to get up, to put on your clothes, not stay in your pajama, because it's important for our well-being. Sometimes you see it in problems in concentrating at work, when you're not able to get things done. Also when you're struggling to form or maintain relationships, and when you continue to worry about trying new things. So what we will discuss is coping styles. What do we mean with coping styles? It's how we deal with situations, and this can be effective, but we also know that some of our coping styles can be less effective. So I want to discuss a few building blocks, like what are the bases of effective coping. Safety. When we're talking about safety, it's not only physical safety, but it's also important to talk about psychological safety. And this is related to people feeling heard and understood. The feeling that your needs are being taken into account. Also, support is one of the building blocks. We have seen in research that social support is one of the most important factors in times of crisis. People who are able to provide and also accept support tend to respond better in crisis situations than people who are more isolated. The last point is structure. We mentioned also previously that it's very important to maintain structure, and we also have seen that during times of crisis, people tend to respond positively to increased structure in your daily lives. How to reduce anxiety? I want to discuss a few basics. We all know this. These are basics that we all know, but still knowing doesn't mean that we apply it in daily life. So I want to go through it just quickly as a reminder that we can use in our daily lives. We all know that exercise is very important, but exercise is also very important when we are anxious, because it reduces stress in our bodies, and that facilitates our happy hormones. Try going for a physically distanced walk to get some fresh air if possible. If not possible, there are online classes that you can do from home, or do a little bit of a dance session on your own with others to get some positive energy. It's very, very important to get some exercise, especially when we are confined to our homes. Of course, in addition, it's important to eat healthily. Balanced diet is very important, and to get enough sleep. Fresh air, I know it's, I put it there. I know it's a sensitive thing, because that's one of the things we need to stay at home as much as possible, but we can be creative. We've been talking about maybe opening your window and getting some fresh air. If you have a balcony, or if you are even more lucky and you have a garden, get some fresh air and be creative in that. These are already some basic tips to reduce anxiety, but now I would like to hand over to Mary, who would like to go a bit deeper into what helps you to reduce anxiety.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So my name is Mary Leahy, and I'm one of the staff counsellors at UN Geneva. So we'll now have a look at, like Rosa said, we'll go a little deeper. And this kind of thing helps us to manage a bit better. So what can we control and what can we not control? So first, it's about focusing on what we can control. When we're anxious, we often focus on the bad things. And in this pandemic, there are many things we cannot control. All we can control is our behavior, how we react to it. And in this case, it's following the government guidelines and the World Health guidelines of keeping physical distancing and continuing to wash our hands every time we come back from being outside, or from potentially touching something, maybe in a shared laundry room or something like that. So as individuals, it's the only power that we have in battling the virus. But it's important to keep our minds on this and not on all of the things we cannot control. We cannot control the outcome for ourselves or our loved ones, other than to encourage them to do the same. So if we have a look at this slide with the fox, and we just pick a couple of things. So what the fox and what we can control is things like turning off the news. I mean, some people have told me that they maybe had a good weekend because they watched very little news or no news at all. And sometimes we need that just to give our brains a break and a rest. Also, you can do things like having kindness and grace in this situation. So what helps often when we're struggling as human beings is to help somebody else. That helps us to feel good, and it gives us a sense of control. We can find fun things to do, maybe a project that we have been working on for a while, something, maybe a book that we wanted to read, or some people like painting or knitting or doing something, maybe more baking. A lot of people are baking and cooking now. And then what also helps is thinking about how other people react in other people's activities, and we can learn from them. We can ask our friends, so how are you coping, or your colleagues, how are you actually managing to work from home? It's not easy, but as time goes by, we will all hopefully find strategies and ways that will help us. And then, so we move from this to this chart. It's about, again, controlling our behavior. Who do we want to be during COVID-19? So if we look at this, there's the fear zone, the learning zone, and then the growth zone. So for example, when we're in the fear zone, and we might have been like this at the beginning, or maybe not, because at the beginning, often you might have heard people saying, oh, it's just like a really bad flu, and oh, okay, so it's far away, it's on the other side of the world from, say, where we are at the moment in Geneva. But of course, for people in Wuhan, there was fear. So if thinking of when we're in the fear zone, it could be having thoughts like, oh, I need to hoard all the food and toilet paper and medicines. And of course, you'll see that with lots of people in the supermarket having a big trolley and buying loads of things, and then shelves were empty for other people. That seems to be settling down a bit now in Geneva anyway, which is good. Another sign of fear would be forwarding all of the messages that you receive, all the bad news to everyone on your WhatsApp group, for example, talking about it continually, maybe complaining all the time and feeling very tired, feeling very negative. And for some people, it's difficult because their personality might be to be a negative person or to be a pessimist, and they will see the worst in everything. So it's extra challenging for those people to try and stretch themselves a bit and learn. So, but if they can, then you can go into what we call the learning zone. So that's where you make yourself aware of the situation and you think about the best way to act. So that might be by maybe looking at the Johns Hopkins University information a little bit, maybe reading about the Centers for Disease Control, or maybe what the Swiss government or the French government recommend, and of course the World Health Organization. And then maybe stopping communicating all and consuming all of this bad news, maybe limiting yourself to an hour a day, maybe in the morning when you first get up, or sometime in the afternoon, maybe thinking about it, and then just moving on with your day and doing things like acknowledging everyone is trying their best. There may be feelings and thoughts out there of anger, of why has this happened, and the sun is coming out now. Easter holidays are supposed to be starting for everybody. Try not to be angry, or at least acknowledge the anger and let it go, because for now it will pass, but as they say, it will pass sooner if we do follow the rules and if we stay at home, that we don't be tempted to go out sunbathing or to do things that maybe put other people at risk. They say, you know, you're supposed to act as if we do ourselves have the illness, and that we might contaminate somebody else by breaking the rules. So then that's the learning zone. The third part is the growth zone. This is where we can actually learn from this. We can use our skills and help others in need. We can be kind to ourselves and show empathy to ourselves and others. So that could be on a day maybe where you find yourself having a lot of fear and anxiety. Don't be too hard on yourself. It's very normal as well, and just try again. If you find yourself getting low, maybe do something nice for yourself, cook a nice meal, or maybe if you have a balcony or if it's a sunny day, stand in the window and open the window and just breathe. Show gratefulness, and then try to practice calmness and patience in your relationships and try and be creative. This is all very hard. That's why we call it the growth zone. It's not easy. It's something that we have to work on. But by changing our behavior and thinking about how we behave, it can help us. So even if you might find yourself snapping or being in a bad mood, the next day you can try again. It's okay. This is how we learn and grow. So to give you some more information of how effective ways of dealing with uncontrollable circumstances. So there's two things we can do. We can either surrender and give into it, or we can actively try and cope with it. So by surrendering, we mean it's the uncontrollability of events. It's most directly experienced in life's most extreme moments. So for example, the death of a loved one, a violent assault or an attack, or maybe ourselves or a family member having a life-threatening disease in the past. And in situations like these, the options for personal control are very limited. There are less extreme examples where uncontrollability is also experienced. And for example, we can find it maybe very difficult to fall asleep. We can find maybe we're living with someone, or we have colleagues who are always negative or always positive, and we just want to tell them stop, because also someone who's positive all the time, that can be annoying as well, because this is a difficult situation and it is normal to have days where we find that it's upsetting us and making us feel sad and down. But in these examples, it's important to exert the control and to think about, for example, if we're trying to fall asleep and we're finding ourselves awake for many hours, how do we do that? How do we get these negative thoughts out of our head? So the situation would be not to try and put more control on yourself and really make yourself fall asleep or change the way you're thinking. It's about surrendering to those thoughts in the moment and accepting that this is an uncontrollable situation and there's nothing we can do at the moment. We have to trust on others' skills, like the medical professionals, the researchers, that they will find a cure and they will help us come through this. So it's important to note that surrendering differs from being overtaken by our emotions or being controlled by others, being overtaken occurs without choice. However, when we surrender, it's an active, intentional process. We're agreeing to surrender, which also means accepting the situation that we're in now. We're saying, okay, it's here now, and we may be all at home for April, maybe May as well, maybe a bit longer, we don't know, but trying not to obsess about it too much and making the best of the situation. So that could be in your home life, having an office space that's set up for you, maybe at the weekend organizing your clothes and your things for work like you did if you were going to work, but maybe allowing ourselves to slow down a bit as well and accept that we're going through a time of change. So the other part of this is active coping, and this means when there's nothing we can do to change a given situation. It does not mean that we cannot deal with a situation in an active way. It refers to strategies that are directed at problem solving, and it means taking direct action to deal with the stress and to reduce its effects. So these strategies aim to either change the nature of the stressful situation or to modify how we think and feel about it. So people who engage in active coping rely upon their own resources to deal with a situation. That could be maybe you're good at problem solving in your life anyway. Things have happened to you in the past and you found ways to deal with them. So we have to put in more effort. We seek information, or what we call reframe the meaning of the problem. So active coping is an adaptive way of dealing with the events, and it's an important component of resilience, which means that we get stronger, that we fall down or we have a bad day or we feel bad, but we pick ourselves back up again. We find a way to manage with the stress. So in most low or no control situations, so at the moment we don't have that much control about other people or how long this virus is going to last. But what we can do is we can cope with our own emotions and feelings that are present. We can acknowledge them and then try to find a way to get through this. So let's see. The next little bit would be looking at tips of how to reduce anxiety. So we can do things like journaling. This means just writing a diary every day of techniques that can help you manage life and maybe help you if you're someone maybe who maybe panics a lot or worries about extreme cases. By writing, you can track your thoughts, you can explore your emotions, and it helps us with what we call self-regulation. So in the same way we track our physical symptoms, do I have maybe a sore throat today or a cough or a fever? Now, by writing a journal, we're looking at our psychological and emotional ups and downs. Was today a bad day? Did I feel anxious for a very long period? Or am I feeling frustrated, perhaps, and angry? Maybe there's things in your life that were meant to happen and that they're on hold at the moment, like a really nice holiday or a wedding, a baptism, all these kinds of things that are disrupted, a big birthday, maybe a 50th birthday party, everything has to go on hold. So, but when we write things down, we really do feel better. And it's also something that we can look back on later on and think, it's quite interesting to read later on to see how we coped and how maybe bad it was for us some days. Then there's another tip called a worry window. It's where you can dedicate maybe 15 minutes a day, and you can say, okay, for these 15 minutes, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to allow my brain to just go all over the place and worry about everything. So what could help sometimes is actually writing a list. Okay, this is what I'm worried about. I'm feeling very tired today. I'm overwhelmed with work. I've got too much to do and too many deadlines. Maybe you're worried about finances. Maybe you're worried about your own breathing or about a family member's breathing, or maybe an elderly family member or a friend who might have a low immune system. But we just allow ourselves these 5 minutes to worry and ideally write everything down. But then we say stop. So you can either set an alarm on your clock or you can just do it maybe while you're having a cup of coffee. But then you do say, okay, stop, time is up now. Now I've got to get back to my normal life. And it is hard to do this, but we can do it, and it does make us feel good. And you can tell yourself, well, I can worry again tomorrow. So it's just something to try. It might not work for everybody, but it's just an idea. Then You've probably heard about the term catastrophizing, and we talked about this a little bit in our last webinar as well. So this just means when we get very anxious, we can often see worst case scenarios. So you might have heard people saying, oh, this is going to go on for 6 months or 9 months. The economy is going to be really bad. We're all going to lose our jobs. The world will never be the same again. And while it's normal to do that a little bit, because most of us have never been through a pandemic before, we do have to tell ourselves stop and slow down and breathe. Again, we can't control this, and imagining the worst possible cases and discussing them with maybe other people or offloading our fears onto other people actually isn't helpful. So when you do find yourself doing this, it's important to bring your mind back to the present, do some breathing, and take it one day at a time or a few hours at a time. And think about the times in the past, maybe where you did go through something very difficult. It could be like a break in a breakup of a very important relationship, or a death of a loved one, or maybe you had all your dreams and hopes on going to a certain university and then you didn't get in. But we get through this. So it's important to look at how did you cope back then? And then sometimes challenges and bad things that happen in our lives, they can actually have rewards for us too, because we learn something about ourselves, or we change our behaviors completely. Maybe some people are stuck in a job or in a situation and they've been meaning to take action and change for a long time. And now a life-changing event like this can actually give them a bit of space to think and reflect about what is going to make them happy in their lives and what do they want to do. And then another thing is important about what to do when we wake up at maybe 4 in the morning. That can be very, very hard. We can breathe. When we're lying in bed, sometimes they say, you know, don't look at a clock, just try and go back asleep, keep your room dark. But if you're in bed for absolutely ages and that's not working, then maybe do get up and make yourself a cup of herbal tea, or you could watch a comedy or something on the television. It's not really good to have the stimulation of television. However, sometimes it's better than lying in bed for maybe 3 hours. But do try to maybe practice some mindfulness if that's what you like, or listen to some calming music, and that might help you go back asleep. And also you can talk to somebody that you trust, maybe the next day. You could again write a little journal of what's going on in your head at 4 in the morning, because usually when we're awake at 4 in the morning, it's because our brains during the day are absorbing all of this information and it goes into our unconscious. And the psychologists say that during the nighttime, our brains are processing all of our difficult thoughts. So maybe when we're waking up, it's because the brain actually doesn't want to process these difficult thoughts anymore. So you might have found that yourself, where you've had a bad dream or you're worrying about something and you wake up and you think, gosh, I'm glad I'm awake. I'm glad that was just a dream and it's over. Or now you might wake up and think, gosh, it's not a dream, actually. COVID-19 is here with us to stay for the moment. But sometimes it's better being awake than being asleep. So let me just have a look. There's a couple of more tips on the next slide. So this would be, let's see. Oh yeah, so again, things to keep our well-being healthy. It's like maintaining your regular routine as much as possible. So even if you've had a bad night's sleep, try not to be tempted to have a nap during the day, unless you're really, really tired, and you can have maybe an hour at lunchtime. But try not to sleep later in the day, because that will disturb your sleep again the next night. And usually when we've had one bad night of sleep, the next night is better. Then try to balance mental and physical activities. So while we're told to stay home and not go out, I think it is important to go out a little bit, maybe keeping the social or the physical distance. And I know, for example, I try not to walk on the grass when I'm in a park. I don't want to stand on the bluebells and the daisies. But in this situation, when there's actually quite a lot of people in the park, sometimes I do walk on the grass just so I'll have that physical distance from somebody else. But it's important to go out, even if it's just 15 minutes and near your home, but it gives our brains a rest and our minds a rest from all of the maybe anxiety and bad thoughts that we can have at home. So just physically leaving and being in a different environment is good for our eyes and our brain. Then another thing to do to help us manage anxiety is focusing on constructive activities that we can accomplish. So, for example, after Easter, the CLM, the Centre for Learning and Multilingualism, are starting up all of their courses again. So many of you may have already enrolled in a language or in different courses, but if not, now is the time to have a look at their website and maybe enroll in something that you've been meaning to do. And then it will be like a goal that you will have achieved during this time of COVID. And if you are already in a class, then you can maybe, I know I go to French, for example, and a lot of people don't have time to do their homework. Maybe now there will be time to do homework and to practice. Then we talked before, this one, number 9, is about limiting media exposure to reliable sources. That's very important. Again, you've probably seen a lot of rumors about maybe having garlic that will help, or drinking water every 20 minutes, but most of this is actually nonsense, and we still don't know what the best things are other than washing your hands and staying at home and self-isolating if you're feeling ill, so that you don't pass any germs on to other people. And then the last tip here is thinking about spiritual beliefs that can nurture you through challenges. It doesn't have to be that you're part of a church or that you have faith, although usually for people who do have that, it is actually very helpful in these times. And some people will find themselves being drawn back to maybe a religion that they practiced in their childhood. Not necessarily because they believe more now than because we're more at risk, but it's because it's a sense of comfort, nostalgia. You might think of a grandparent that brought you somewhere, and maybe you went somewhere and lit a candle, or you went to and had a religious celebration for somebody's birth or for a happy occasion. For everybody else who's not maybe religious, you can also do things like having appreciation in nature, noticing that, yes, we feel like our lives are on hold at the moment and we're all being told to stay at home and not go out and not go on holidays. However, babies are still being born, the grass is still growing. For anyone who has a garden, they will see that they still have to maintain their garden and keep on top of things. The rest of us can see that the seasons are changing. It's moving, say, from winter into spring, and soon it will be the summer. So life goes on, and we can actually find faith in nature, and that helps us get through these difficult times. And so now we've talked quite a lot at you. So what might be good now is just to relax for a little bit. And if you would like to practice some mindfulness, we'll just do a 5-minute session. If this is not for you, then maybe you could have a little cup of tea, or you could listen to a favorite song. But otherwise, we might just have a little session to help us, because the reason we're doing this is because there's a lot of research into mindfulness meditation that shows that actually it does help the part of our brain that is running away all the time and getting very anxious. And they have done studies in hospitals. There's a person called John Kabat-Zinn that many of you may have heard of. He's a researcher in Massachusetts, and he started working with people who were critically ill in hospital. And he noticed that it actually, by practicing mindfulness meditation, it reduced their anxiety and feelings of depression. So we'll just have a little session together. So what I'd like you to do is get comfortable in your chair, or if it's easier for you, you can lie down on the floor, maybe on a mat. And then make sure you're nice and warm, that you have maybe a scarf around your neck, or some people like to put a blanket around them, or a jumper. And then if we just connect, if you start by planting your feet on the floor and pushing your feet into the floor, and then connecting with the chair you're sitting on. So underneath your thighs and your sitting bones and your hips, just feel the support of the chair. And then on your back, sit back into the chair as well and feel the support of the chair on your back. And then we'll begin. Either you can put your gaze into the palms of your hands, and you can put your palms in your lap, or you can close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you. So we'll begin by relaxing your eyes and your eyelids. And then thinking of your forehead, your eyebrows, your temples, and just thinking of relaxing this whole part of our upper face. Then moving in a wave over your scalp and down the back of your neck, allowing your scalp to relax. Then coming around to your jaw and your chin, thinking of your mouth and your tongue, and just allowing the lower part of our faces to relax. And then taking in your nose and your cheeks and your ears, just allowing the face to relax. And now if you just lift your shoulders up gently and roll them back. This helps as well when we look at the computer a lot, just to give our necks and the tops of our shoulders a little stretch. You can think of opening up your chest with like a smile across your chest. This helps open up our lungs and it helps us breathe. And if you like, you can put one hand on your upper chest and one hand on your stomach and take a nice deep breath in through your nose, allowing the air to go all the way down the back of your throat into your upper lungs and your chest, but all the way down to your diaphragm, and you may feel your belly puffing out with the air. And then exhale. Do a long, slow exhale from your diaphragm all the way up. Imagine the air going up your lungs, which are at the back of your body as well. We often forget about that. Maybe visualizing the air in the lungs and your back, traveling up to the top of our back and our chest and out through our noses. And when you're ready, take another deep inhalation and hold the air inside us for a few moments. And then exhale deeply and let go. And as we inhale, think of inhaling pure, clean mountain air. You can visualize the tops of the mountains and the Alps, the pure, clean snow with the sun shining on it. We're just inhaling something good, something healthy for us. And maybe feel your belly puffing out into your hand. And then as we exhale, think of letting go of any tension, any stress in the body, just exhaling it out, up through your body and out through your nose, just letting go. And we'll inhale deeply one more time, filling up our bodies with pure, clean air and just holding that sensation for a few moments. And this time as we exhale, we'll push the air up through our stomachs, up through our lungs, out through our noses. And this time, as we let go, think of any tension, any stress melting from your neck, your collarbones and your shoulders, melting down your arms, past your elbows, to your hands, and out through the tips of your fingertips. And we'll take another breath in. And this time as we exhale, think of the air going from your lungs and your stomach, and imagine like a wave traveling down your body, past your sides, your ribs, to your core, your stomach and the muscles of your lower back. Traveling down our sitting bones and our pelvis, traveling down our legs, past our knees, down past our shins and our calves, to our ankles, along our feet, down to our toes, And then allowing any tension, any strain to just melt away through the toes. And you're feeling grounded with your feet on the floor, or if you're lying on your back, you will feel on the ground, you can feel grounded underneath you. And we just take a moment to notice, how does the body feel now? Just from doing a few breaths, does it feel different than when we started? And then when you're ready, you can just start wiggling your fingers and your toes. Maybe rotating your wrists and your ankles. And this is good as well for all of us that type all day. And then taking a nice deep breath again, rolling your shoulders back. And when you're ready, opening your eyes and coming back to the present, back to the room. And the purpose of that is just to give us a little break, because as our minds and our bodies concentrate on breathing and letting go of tension and stresses in the body, it helps us also to switch off and forget about the worries and the anxieties that we have. And it's especially important at the moment because there's a lot of anxiety around breathing, and because this is a respiratory illness, you might find yourself checking your breathing more than you would normally. So when this happens to you or to a family member, just take your time to breathe, to roll your shoulders back, open up your chest, and then place your hands on your chest and your stomach and actually just breathe and tell yourself, I'm okay, I'm breathing normally, everything's okay. And of course, if you're not, and if someone is ill, then of course they speak to the doctor. But for most of us, it will just be those feelings of panic and anxiety that maybe make us worry a little bit more than normal. So thank you very much for participating in the mindfulness session. And now what we'll do is hand back to Natalie for the questions and answers. Oh, and just to show as well, Natalie just put up the slide for how you can contact us. This is our email address, staffcounsellor@un.org. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mary and Rosa, for sharing all of this important knowledge and information with us. We hope it was useful for you. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box. We are aware that there's around a 60-second delay to receive your questions. So we'll just wait for any questions or ideas that might come up. In the meantime, we've had a few questions about the slides from today's session. They will definitely be available as a PDF version after the session. We'll put them onto the event page on the Commons website. But we also have a question about maybe sending a message. And of course, yes, we will send you an email with those slides as well towards the end of the day with the recording, in case you would like to watch it again or you would like to share it with somebody else. But also, in the meantime, Mary, a few questions I've had from some colleagues and different discussions, and also to Rosa, is how do we also support maybe family members or others around us who might be feeling anxiety? With these slides, can we share this information with those around us, or is there a way that you would recommend that we do that?
Yes, I think that's a good idea, because often we're either maybe in an apartment or a home at the moment with children, with maybe partners, and we're all different. And then also you might have communication with maybe an elderly family member who's very far away from us. So for example, my mum is in good health, and she doesn't like to be told, even though she's 77, she doesn't like to be told to stay at home. But other people worry more than she does. But when she does feel a bit anxious, I talk to her about breathing and maybe doing a bit of mindfulness and staying in the moment, and also doing things like trying not to catastrophize, trying to maybe do something nice for yourself every day, like if you do have a garden, or you can buy yourself some flowers, or go for a little walk, maybe if there's a way where you live near water. Water can be very calming and peaceful. I mean, some of this, it depends on the person. Some people will like it, and then you can share the presentation with them or encourage them to do mindfulness, and we have lots of links. For other people, other family members, they might prefer to go maybe for a jog. I don't think many people are swimming at the moment, even outdoors, but maybe maybe some people do, but maybe encouraging the family member to talk about their fears and their concerns and their anxiety a little bit, maybe like the idea of the 15 minutes of worry every day. You could talk with maybe a partner or a friend and then say, okay, how are you feeling today? How are we going to get through this together? How do we manage? Like, one person might want to talk about it all the time and the other person doesn't. So it's important to communicate well. And then with children, it's important they will always follow the lead of their parents. So if a parent is feeling anxious, a lot of parents would prefer to hide that, and I think that's important. You can talk with somebody your own age, maybe a friend, but when you're with children, it's important to reassure them that everything is okay, that there are people in charge. There are doctors, nurses, medical professionals and researchers who are helping us get through this. And you can explain it in an age-appropriate way, but also encourage them to breathe, to do activities in the house like painting. There's something called art therapy where children can draw, and then you can help interpret their paintings and what do they mean. So it's just mainly about not being afraid to talk about anxiety and the bad things, but then maybe reassuring them that everything will be okay. In the long run, for most of us, I mean, in some cases, things won't be okay. There may be people that will die of this illness, but that's a difficult conversation to have. But for now, it's important to just at least address people's fears and see what you can take control of, which might be washing your hands and keeping a social distance, and then following the rules coming from WHO and the government.
Thank you so much, Mary. Anything also to share from you, Rosa?
Thank you very much, Natalie and Mary. I think what Mary said, I fully agree on that. The only thing that I would add is that I think it's very important to be there for your family member, to already be there and support the family member. I think that's already great. And I think to allow people to talk about their feelings, that's already a first step, because for some people they might feel ashamed, they might feel uncomfortable talking about it. So to allow a little bit of space to talk about their worries and their fears, I think that's already helpful. In the same time, as Mary mentioned in the webinar, maybe if you feel like it's taking over, it's taking too much time to talk about it, then maybe allow them to have a certain period to talk about it, and also find some distractions. So I think it's very important to have a balance. In the one hand, allow them to talk about it, to normalize it, that it's okay to have emotions and it's okay to have feelings of anxiety. And in the same time, if you feel it's too much, find distractions, go and do some bakings together, cooking, exercising, and maybe discuss the webinar of today and the tips, share that with your family members. I think that's all from my side. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you. Mary and Rosa, we do have a question that's come in. How do I help my partner who is not sleeping well or long enough? Are there any insights you could share there?
Yes, I think some people have problems sleeping anyway, and for them this might be extra difficult. I think what's important is to try and stick to a routine. So I don't know if your partner is working or not. For some people it's quite hard because the work that they would normally do isn't possible. So they're maybe working less, or they're doing things like mandatory training, or maybe they've volunteered to help another colleague in a different department. For example, maybe someone who's good with IT can help because IT are overwhelmed at the moment and very, very busy. But then there's also people who have extra work, more work than ever. So, and in both situations, we can struggle with sleep. What I think is very important is the physical body needs to actually move during the day and do something. If you think about years ago, when, you know, we had to hunt and we had to go and pick our fruit off the trees and kill our animals, we actually got that physical we had physical energy, and we got it out during the day, and people came home tired. Whereas now, you know, we go to the supermarket, and actually nowadays you might only go to the supermarket once a week or twice a week to reduce your risk of catching any germs. So if that's the case, then it is very important when you're at home to do some kind of physical exercise. And you can literally do things like lying down on the floor and doing push-ups, stretches, you can watch a video, an exercise video online. It's quite hard to motivate yourself for most people, so it's good to watch a video and have somebody guiding you. But we do actually need to get some of this adrenaline out to make us physically tired so that we can sleep. So you could try all of that, and then if it's not working for you, what's very important is to have a bedroom where there's no work papers in there, no laptop, or if you do have to work in your bedroom, that you maybe put a cover over it at night time, like a scarf or a sheet or something, so you can't see it. And you don't have all your notebooks and things from work reminding you of work in there. And then that you try to keep what they call good sleep hygiene. So maybe have the window open, have the blinds shut, and then try and maybe listen to calming music. You can do some of the mindfulness meditations, or you can have a nice bath or a hot shower before you go to bed. These things help us calm down. And then you can try breathing. These things help. And it is quite hard, but you will find something that will help you. And usually when we have one night of sleep that's very bad, then the next night is better. For people that have a real concern, though, it is important to speak with your doctor. If somebody's maybe very anxious, then sometimes doctors will prescribe sleeping tablets for a few days, but generally we wouldn't recommend them because it's so easy to get addicted. Even things like in the States, there's a lot of over-the-counter things like melatonin, they're called, but you can become dependent on that and tell yourself, oh, I can't sleep at all. So it's maybe very important to do exercise, maybe only have coffee or tea in the morning, and then try and have a bath and try and find different ways to help your body naturally relax. And of course, then it would be no internet, no TV, maybe for 2 hours before your normal bedtime. Just read or listen to music, because we get stimulation from our brains, from the television and from the internet. So I'm not sure if maybe Rosa might have something to add as well.
Thank you, Mary. No, I think actually you covered everything already. I think very important what I wanted to say is the sleep hygiene. I think it's very important also to balance when do you do the exercise. Try not to do it just before you're going to bed. What also really helps is not to watch any television or using your phones just before you go to bed. Try really the hour or maybe even 1.5, 2 hours before going to bed. Relax, do some meditation, breathing exercises, reading, instead of having all these different lights and that your brains are not able to start slowing down. But I think, Mary, thank you so much. You covered a lot.
That's great. Thank you both, Mary and Rosa, for all of this advice. There are no more questions for the moment, but we do thank you very much for joining us and taking the time to be here for this session.
Sorry, Natalie, to interrupt you. I see that there's
no worries.
Questions coming in.
Pardon me. Yes, we do. How to deal with emotional eating, especially if we live alone? Pardon me. There's one more question.
No worries. I just saw it coming in when you started talking, so I thought just. I mean, I can answer this question. I think it's very difficult when we're alone and we're not feeling well, and you're maybe sensitive to start eating when you're not feeling well. It's easy to start eating when you're working from home and it's so close by. You can open your cupboard and there's food. One of the things that I think is very important, it's often related to stress, emotional eating. So all the tips that we've shared before in the first webinar and also now in how to reduce stress can help you also to feel better, which will help you also to avoid starting to eat. So I think to take good care of yourself, to lower the number of stress, will help you also to maybe avoid starting eating too much. Also, what could help is to follow a structure, like we said, with getting up and getting ready for the day. Also try to do that with food. Start with the day with breakfast. Maybe have a healthy snack before going to lunch. Do not forget about 30, having a lunch break. I think that's very important. Also, what helps, and it's sometimes difficult because we all know that it can be really tempting to buy good chocolates or other things. Try to avoid distraction and do not buy the unhealthy things. And if you really feel like eating, try to eat like an apple or something more healthily. It is difficult when you're working from home, but I would say really focus on the managing stress to avoid going into emotional eating. Mary, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question because it's very true and it's something that I'm tempted with myself. So I think it's true to maybe have in the house healthy snacks like yogurt, bananas, nuts, things that are filling and that are also good for us. For example, a walnut apparently is good for our brains. Food that's shaped like body parts helps us. And that if you think, okay, so I'm eating a walnut because it's got like oil and nutrition for my brain. So it's about changing the way you think about food. A lot of us think of like pizza as comfort food or chips or bread, for example. So it's important to stop and think each time and think, okay, why am I eating? And maybe, having a balance so you're not starving, because now is not the time to go on a diet or to be too strict with yourself. So do have a good breakfast, maybe a healthy breakfast with blueberries, or if you love bread, you could try having brown bread instead of white bread. That's better for our systems. And then maybe allow yourself some treats, maybe 1 or 2 days a week. I mean, Easter is coming, so maybe do buy yourself an Easter egg. They often say dark chocolate, for example, is good for our heart. So you could tell yourself, okay, I'll be good during the day, and then after my dinner, I will have some dark chocolate or a glass of wine. But it's about actually, I mean, it can take years, but it's about actually noticing, am I eating because I'm hungry, or am I eating because I want to treat myself and do something nice for myself? So it takes time, but you can pause and then make healthy choices and try not to let yourself be starving or forget about the diets for the moment. Unless your doctor has put you on a diet, it's okay. But it's a very important question, and it's a really good example that in our lives today, most of us, well, a lot of people manage stress by eating, so it is a good thing to be aware of. Yeah.
We do have a final question before we leave. What is the difference between anxiety and depression? It seems to be a gray area sometimes.
It's difficult. I think most people have some level of anxiety and some level of depression. Anxiety, we can think of it as more like, often they used to call it like having a nervous breakdown, or it's about our nerves where they're rubbing off each other in the brain and making us feel bad. It can be like symptoms of anxiety are like having maybe a panic attack or a pain in your chest, not necessarily in your heart, but in your chest. We can feel a bit hyper, we can feel really worried. Sometimes we'll have things like sweaty palms, or your face might go all red, your heart might beat very fast. It's like a nervousness and an inability to sit still and relax. And it's about worrying about everything and catastrophizing, those kinds of things. Depression is kind of harder. It can be like a low mood. Often people would say they're feeling blue. But what happens is sometimes when we're depressed, we don't know it, and other people can see that we're depressed. It's about your mood really changing, and you have maybe no energy. You're tired all the time. You just want to sleep. And there are maybe things in the past that you enjoyed doing that you've stopped enjoying now. Maybe you used to like going to exercise, or you liked going to see your friends, and now you feel like, some people are contacting each other virtually, and they're having a drink together, or they're cooking dinner together. But people who are depressed won't have the energy or motivation for any of that. They will go quite low. So, but often it's very normal for all of us to have both. So on different days. But if you are somebody who does worry about depression and anxiety, do reach out to us and we can help you. And then also by talking, you can notice patterns and your behavior, and we can help you find coping strategies for both. So both are very challenging and very difficult and different. I don't know if Rosa wants to add anything, or maybe not here. Maybe it might be best if people contact us individually to talk a bit more about depression.
Okay, thank you, Mary and Rosa, for all of this information. It's been really helpful for me, and I hope for all of you as well. Thank you for joining us. We do unfortunately have to leave you. The hour is up, but we hope that it's been valuable for you to take back to your respective workplaces and your respective homes, of course, at this time. If you do have any feedback for us, don't hesitate to let us know. You can scan the QR code on the screen now if you want to provide us any feedback, but also on ideas for sessions that will be valuable for you at this time. Please share. You can also email us at commons@un.org. We do have 3 more sessions this week related to mindfulness and keeping a healthy mind, one tomorrow in English and on Thursday 2 in French. So to find more information, you can head to our website. It's commons.ungeneva.org. You can find actually the URL on the screen now for all the details about the sessions and also how to connect. So please join us if you are interested. And thank you for joining us today. Have a great rest of the day. Take good care and see you soon.